all these things that one woman shouldn't experience in her lifetime, let alone one right after another, after another, after another. Like, I get that. And I hear you, and you're okay not to be okay sometimes.
Hey, sweet mama. Welcome back to another episode of the Mama Mindset. I'm your host and creator, Amy Cothran. Thank you so much for joining me again today. I'm very excited to bring you today's incredible special guest. Her name is Terrianne. I've known her for most of my life, and today she's going to share with us this incredible, vulnerable, beautiful, but also traumatic story of her survival. She suffered from a very severe complication after having multiple C-sections, and she is now an advocate for sharing this issue that most people aren't talking about, that nobody's really talking about. In the story, you'll hear that she shouldn't be here to share this story. She literally died. And I'm excited and grateful to share this story, for the opportunity to still have the chance to speak with her about this and share this with my listeners. She talks to us about how she's overcome this, the situation that she's gone through, what she's working towards now, and what you can do if you are in a similar situation. So grab a cozy beverage and join me in this beautiful, incredible, and brave conversation with my really good friend, Terrianne. Hi, Terrianne. Welcome to the show.
Hi.
Thank you so much for coming on today. I'm really excited to have this conversation. And for my listeners, I've known Terrianne for like my whole life. since
a long time.
We were in school. Yeah. Terrianne also graduated from Kendrick, where I graduated from, just a year ahead of me. So we go back a long ways, and I'm really lucky to still have you in my life and still stay in touch. And your daughter is like very close to the same age as Gracie. And so I'm excited.
So
I'm excited to have you on, and really excited for you to share this emotional and incredible story. I mean, like, not to be overly dramatic right off the bat, but like, it's just literally like a story of survival. Like, it's a story of you surviving, which is insane. So
yeah, I'm excited.
Thank you for being willing to come on and share it today. So first, why don't you tell the audience like a little bit about who you are and the kids and all the fun stuff.
Okay. So like Amy said, my name is Terrianne, and I have known Amy for a really long time. We've, I think, been in school together our entire life. So we've known each other since we were really little. So I am married to my wonderful husband. We've been married for 9 years. I have a stepson who is 12, and our daughter is 7, and our son is 2. So we have a beautiful, wonderful family. And we were done having kids. we were not going to have any more kids. Kyle was going to get a vasectomy, and we were going to wait for the spring, and we just thought, okay, like, our family is complete, it's beautiful, it's gorgeous, and we're so happy and blessed. But that changed last fall. So in October, we had a surprise and found out that we were pregnant again, which was very exciting. But for any moms and dads out there who have like been done and then found out that they weren't really done, that is an adjustment.
Right.
It's just a mental, like, okay, just give me a second, like, this is a blessing and we're so excited, but it's just like a mental shift when you're focused on something else, and you've decided that you aren't gonna have any more kids, and then you are. So it was like super exciting, but it was unexpected and it was a complete surprise. So that started our journey last fall on this adventure, and so we embraced that with open arms, and we were excited.
Right. And so you processed that. You went through the kind of
Yeah.
oh shit moment. Okay. Am
Yes.
I excited? I'm not really excited. I'm really surprised, but now I'm excited and I'm super happy and we're
Right.
ready.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
So
So then,
we
mhm,
processed that for, I mean, a little bit, but like a good 3 weeks passed, maybe 4 weeks. And
mhm,
then I found out I had coronavirus,
mhm,
and I got really sick really fast. I thought I had allergies, and the next day they were still there, and I thought, oh no, this is not allergies. And so I went and got tested, and found out I had COVID, and I ended up getting a pretty bad case of it actually. I had to miss like 19 days of work. I was really sick. I was super
mhm,
sick. Luckily, no one else in my family got really sick,
mhm,
and we all quarantined in this house, bored in the house and I'm in the house bored type of situation for,
mhm.
like 21 days or something. But um my body just really like was done. I was sick for quite some time. So worked through that, made it back to work. Then it was the day before Thanksgiving. I had my 8-week ultrasound. Super excited, like going to the doctor, like had the day off for the holiday break, and went in for my ultrasound, and they told me that I was miscarrying. So like I had about 8 good weeks, 6 good weeks of processing everything, pumped, excited, like I told my immediate family. I hadn't really told anybody else yet, which was fine.
Mhm.
Um, and when I went in, they had to like break the news to me that I hadn't bled at all. But basically they said any minute, like, you're just gonna
Mhm.
have to prepare for that. And actually one of our good friends works at the clinic that I go to in Moscow and Pullman, and she was my nurse that day, and she was so pumped and so excited for me to be there. And then it was like,
Oh
oh,
man.
it was so, and she's known us for just as long, like she's known all of us, and she's from our hometown too. And
Yeah.
that was I mean, it was devastating anyways. And I think I just hugged her for like 5 minutes straight, and we both bawled our eyes out, and then had to
Yeah.
go home and tell my family. And then the next day was Thanksgiving. And, like as a mom, you just put on the face, like you are strong, you are tough, you are mom strong. And, so like knowing that that was coming,
Mhm.
but still it's the holidays, and like we're all going to get together and it's fine, everything's fine. And then going back to work, the next Monday, and I actually started miscarrying that weekend.
Mhm.
So I mean, then you go through another stage of a grieving process, so, of like mourning the loss of the child that you were uh, getting used to having after 8 weeks, and like you're
Right.
just excited, and your whole family. And so like that was a whole nother process. And so I
Well, yeah,
I
you're mourning really, you're mourning two things at that point. You're mourning the loss of the idea of another baby and what that looks like as a family. And then you're also mourning the loss of that physical child. You're mourning the loss of the
right,
pregnancy. And you're also going through a lot with your body. So you're mourning those two things while also still going through this traumatic event with your body.
right. So it's like anyone who has gone through a miscarriage, I think, can empathize. It's like a mental, physical, and emotional loss all at the same time.
Hmm.
Like physically, my body is not well. I am
Right.
not well, and mentally and emotionally, I'm not well. But
Hmm.
we just have to do these superhero things as mothers and keep going. Like
Hmm.
and when I did start miscarrying that weekend, I was bleeding very heavily, and I bled that way for a long time. So all the way through December 28th, I was bleeding very, very, very heavily. And so I made an appointment, and I said, I think something's wrong,
So you're
you
a
know?
month in. This is a
Yeah.
month past your
Mm-hmm.
miscarriage. Okay.
And I was calling, like, hey, I think something's wrong. And they're like, oh, this will happen. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
Mhm.
So a whole month and 4 days into the current diagnosis, I said, I need to be seen, like something's wrong.
Mhm.
And so they agreed to see me finally. And at that time, they said, you're probably still just miscarrying. And they sent me home.
Mhm.
A very quick appointment. I don't remember if I saw the doctor. I probably just saw the nurse, and they you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I went home on the 28th, and then on the 31st I called because I was kind of graphic, but I was passing clots like big, like the size of golf balls.
Mm-hmm.
Like something was not right.
Right.
And I listened to my body and I listened to myself and I said, okay, even though you feel like you're inconveniencing them, or it's New Year's Eve, like I think I need help, and I think I need help like right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I called them and kind of said, hey, I need to be seen. I know I was seen 2 days ago and you kind of dismissed me, but please, I need help. Like it's, something's
Mm-hmm.
wrong.
Right. Right.
So they ended up doing an ultrasound, and before they said, oh, we'll let you know the results. Well, the drive to our clinic is 45 minutes from our
Mm-hmm.
house. And before I made it back home, they called me and said I needed to go to the closest emergency room possible. And I said, I don't feel comfortable going to the emergency room here, so I'm going to drive back up to where you are, and I'd like to go there. And they
Mm-hmm.
said, we don't think you'll make it. I said, excuse me, what? And they said, we think if you take that long to get there, you might not make it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you said I was miscarrying,
everything was fine 2 days ago. Now what's going on? Yeah.
What do you mean I'm not going to make it?
Right.
So luckily my mom was here for Christmas. So we were
Mm-hmm.
able to leave all of our kids with her, and Kyle, my husband, and I, we went straight up there. We did drive the 45 minutes. We chanced it.
Mm-hmm.
We made it in. They did an ultrasound and immediately decided they weren't fit to treat me because my situation was so severe that they thought they knew what it was, but nobody there could help me.
Mm-hmm.
So because I was stable, my body was supplying enough blood to continue to function. I wasn't passing out, nauseous, throwing up. I didn't have any symptoms that needed life flight. It was an option, but they said, since you're stable, let's leave all of your IVs in, and your husband can drive you to Spokane, but you need to go right now, like right now.
Mm-hmm.
So we drove up there. They
In
checked me in
January.
immediately.
And I think
Yeah.
if people,
Snowy.
so like January, driving from like we're in Lewiston, Idaho to
Right?
Spokane, Washington, and it is like that is like the worst time of year to go up there, especially with like
Yes.
are you approaching dark at this point? Is it daytime?
Yes. It's dark. It's completely dark. It's snowing. It's blowing. Like they close those highways sometimes because the drifts in the highway get in, like the actual state highways get so bad.
Yes.
You cannot drive them. But
yes, we made the trip in January in the ambulance when Lily got her skull fracture. And I didn't think we were going to make it in the ambulance. And Brad followed us later to come home and get things to meet us up to Spokane. And he almost didn't make it. Like it was really close. So like, I just want everybody to know that like you're driving, that's a whole other level of
so we
big issue.
Pullman to Lewiston, then Lewiston to Spokane, because of course you saved my life. The doctor up there, she's phenomenal. She specializes in all things women's health, like emergencies all over the world. She's from Australia. She's phenomenal. But that's who they wanted me to see. So they call her, get her on the phone, tell her we're coming. It's like became a life or death immediately. And we did not expect that.
Right.
So it turns out I had a diagnosis called Placenta Percreta. People also pronounce it as Placenta Percreta. It's when the placenta attaches, in my situation, through the uterine wall, through the uterine muscle, all the way into my organs, and it embedded in my C-section scar. So it's important to know I had 2 C-sections with my children. Neither of them went well. They were both very traumatic. And I don't know that increases my risk of having placenta percreta. I don't know that, but basically my placenta embedded in my entire lower abdomen, my bladder, it embedded in my C-section scar, in my abdomen, in my muscles, in everything it possibly could have. And it was hemorrhaging and I was bleeding to death. They didn't know that for sure when I was seen in the emergency room in Pullman, but that's kind of what they expected. Of course, they had never seen anything like that. The ultrasound tech had been there for 17 years and never seen it, but she's who caught it.
Yeah. So
which is phenomenal.
you told me this story when we were talking ahead of time, that it was her that caught it, and it
Yes.
because it's rare.
Yes.
And they almost didn't even believe her.
Textbooks. No,
Right.
they almost didn't, because she'd read about it. She'd heard about it. She'd been working there for 17 years and never seen it. And she told the doctor and said, I think this is what it is. And he was like, you are not wrong. And she needs to go now. So she caught it. I actually went in for a follow-up 3 weeks ago, and I got to thank her, which was amazing.
Amazing.
She was bawling. She thought I died. She thought I died. She was bawling. Yeah.
Oh
Anyways.
my gosh.
Yes,
Oh my gosh.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
I was crying. She was crying. Anyways, that was just recent. But so I had placenta percreta. It had embedded in my bladder, my organs, my C-section scar. They had to do an emergency hysterectomy on me to save my life. During that emergency hysterectomy, I died twice, and they had to revive me. But I made it through, and I'm here. So after that, then was mourning the loss of being able to reproduce again, which, I mean, I didn't think we wanted to, but then we got pregnant, and then it was like, okay, maybe we can. And then we lost the baby, and then I lost my ability to do that. So there are so many facets to this that it's phenomenal, but I'm happy to be alive. And they call if you're a placenta Recreta survivor, they call the day that you lived your survival day, because you're not really supposed to make it. And I did. So it's amazing. And they didn't know for sure that's what I had when they did my surgery. So they cut me vertically, which increases my chance of death by 75%.
During surgery.
And
in
correct.
Surgery. Okay.
Had they known for sure what I had, they would have cut me horizontally.
Okay.
But cutting me vertically, and that being like literally where the issue was, increased my chance for death by 75%.
Which is why you basically died on the operating table.
Correct.
Because that happened, and then they had to revive you. And was that because of blood loss?
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm here to tell my story and, to share awareness around all the different aspects of my situation, but that also can be, common in other pregnancies, but we don't get told some things, we don't know some of the background or the details or the options that we have to advocate for ourselves as women, I think. So
yeah. And when you and I were talking about this before, what we really dove kind of deep in our conversation at gymnastics with our daughters was not with our daughters present, but you and I chatting, is this all really revolves around the higher risk of it, because you've had C-sections and because you've had multiple C-sections. But did any of your doctors, when you had C-sections and talked about risks, or talked about risks post C-section, or things that could happen when you get pregnant again, has this ever been brought up to you? Was this ever mentioned?
Never.
Right.
And the only reason I know the words placenta accreta or placenta percreta are because I experienced it. But like we talked about, so a regular pregnancy has a chance of like 1 in 2,500 of experiencing the spectrum of placenta accreta. But if you have 2 or more C-sections, your chance goes to 1 in 272. So your chances are very high if you have multiple C-sections that you can experience this. And that's scary because they don't talk to you about that. I mean, I had 2 C-sections and those words were never spoken to me.
Right. So you have placenta accreta or placenta accretia. It's pronounced both ways. And like you were saying, there's a spectrum of it. So you have placenta accretia, placenta incretia or increta, and then placenta percreta, which is what you had. So you had basically the more rare on the spectrum, and also the most dangerous, the highest risk, and which is more likely based on the fact that you've had multiple C-sections. So this is something that should really be talked about. Now, okay, you and I talked about some percentages and some numbers before we started recording. So you were saying 1 in 272 have the likelihood of getting this if they've had more than one C-section. Now, of that, the likelihood of dying from complications of this is 24%. But dropping back down to the lower spectrum, even if you're on the lower spectrum and you get placenta accreta, still your likelihood of dying, not including just like massive complications from it, is 7%. So
and that's high. Like, let's be real.
Really high. Yes.
Especially if they're not communicating that to you through your conversations. Like, okay, you had a C-section, great. Well, your next baby, you're going to have one too. But here are some risks. That's not, it's not communicated that way. So it's unfortunate because I think that some C-sections, I don't know, but I feel that at times us as women, maybe because it's more convenient because it's actually scheduled for the doctor. They know the time, the place, the day, it's set. It's not like a 1 a.m. call from their family. I don't know. Or, maybe they have to reach a certain quota by the end of the year in order to keep certain statistics. I'm not sure, but I feel like there are times when as a woman, we get pushed into having a C-section when it might not be necessary, or we're not allowed to VBAC, which for those of you who maybe not familiar, vaginal birth after cesarean, there are hospitals that don't allow it. And I understand they have reasons for that. But there are situations where I feel like in my second birth, I would have loved to have tried. Like, my first C-section was horrible. I couldn't walk for 2 weeks after it because they cut tendons and ligaments on the right side of my incision and I couldn't walk. I kind of had to learn how to re-walk after it. So the last thing I wanted to do was have another C-section.
Right.
But there are places and doctors that don't allow that. And, I think there are instances where it would be okay. And it might be healthier for that woman and that baby if they were allowed to try. So I don't know. And then it lowers the rates for these types of things,
Yeah. And it goes back to what you and I were talking about, and you already mentioned this, is advocating for yourself. And if your doctor says one time, well, I think we should schedule a C-section, then you push and you say, I'm not comfortable with that. Why? And they explain why. And you say, I'm still not comfortable with that. Like, I would really like to do this. And like, I think that we just trust so much in a healthcare provider, and that's scary because they're still human.
Yeah.
They still make mistakes and they don't know your body the way that you know your body. I think there is a point in time when like C-sections save lives. So like you and I aren't over here like anti C-section by any means whatsoever.
No, not at all.
The point is that before you just say yes to a C-section, or before you say, I'm done being pregnant, I'm ready to schedule a C-section, the point is that more providers and more people need to be talking about the multitude, not just placenta accreta and the spectrum for which that entails, but the multitude of issues that can come when you have a C-section and then multiple C-sections. Because once you commit to having one C-section, like you're saying, a lot of hospitals don't allow VBAC. And so you're kind of stuck doing a C-section every time here on out. And I know, so I had a certified nurse midwife. She only delivers at the hospital, but because she's a CNM, she's not an OBGYN. She's not allowed to provide birth care. She's not allowed to do a C-section. And so that limits me in my providers that I would be able to have. And they make you they don't allow a VBAC there. So like, there's all of these other scenarios. There's all of these other variables that come into play that a lot of times people aren't talking about. And they're really not educating women when we're in a very vulnerable state within our pregnancies and being pregnant and emotionally
tired and you're exhausted and you're like, I don't want to do this anymore. And they're like, let's get this baby out. You're like, okay, let's do this. Yeah. But hindsight, I don't, it's not this way for everyone. And I'm not saying that it is, but like, I think maybe if I said, hey, can we just wait a little bit?
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Right.
40 weeks and 4 hours pregnant. Like, I can wait a second. Like, can you wait a second?
Yeah.
But now I'm saying that 8 years later after,
Mm-hmm.
but in that moment I was like, okay, I was scared, of
Mm-hmm.
course, but I'm okay, whatever you say. I'm tired. I'm ready to be done,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and there are many, many instances where the C-section can save lives, the baby and the mother.
Right.
And I believe that full-heartedly. But after experiencing what I experienced, ask the questions,
Mm-hmm.
have them ready, do your research, make sure that it's a situation where it's necessary and it's needed, because there are many, many, many other things prior to this that I have dealt with after 2 C-sections,
Mm-hmm.
um like scarring and pain and scar tissue and endometriosis. And my second C-section that I had with Jackson just in 2018, because of the trauma I experienced when I had Brinley, they couldn't get me all the way numb.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very traumatic. I could feel pretty much everything on the right side of my incision,
Mm-hmm.
where when they did my first C-section, they cut all those nerves. And I mean, of course they're going to cut into things. They're cutting your body, but I mean,
Right.
something wasn't done appropriately, because that shouldn't be that way.
Mm-hmm.
The head of anesthesia, the president of the hospital, they all had to come speak to me after I had Jackson, because of the way that it went, and because of
Mm-hmm.
they knew the way that it went,
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't supposed to be like that. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like, you just have to speak up for yourself. Like, I wish they would have let me try to VBAC with Jackson. Then, like, if I said, or it wasn't going good, or they needed to save my life, then okay. But, I wasn't given that option. And it's unfortunate, because, we know our bodies very well. And
Yeah.
when something's not right, or when we think I can do this, like 9 times out of 10, we can. We
Right.
can,
Right.
like,
Yeah.
we are so much stronger than I think some physicians ever give us credit for.
So in your recovery, did it impact your abdomen and your core, like your deep ab muscles, like in recovering, like what I never pronounce it right, but diastasis recti, like did that happen where the ab separation and it takes a long time for that to,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so that happened with actually both my C-sections. And
Uh-huh.
then in my most recent surgery, when I had my hysterectomy, they could not use my C-section scar. They used the same incision site for both cesareans.
Uh-huh.
But for the surgery, it was like, no. And they had a feeling it was embedded in my scar, and it was. So I'm very
Mm-hmm.
blessed they didn't use that same scar. So now I have like a 10-inch scar and like a 7-inch scar. And that area is still tender, and those nothing has recovered, and I'm 10 months out now.
Yeah.
So that's so interesting and unique. And like,
Yeah.
I'm only 5'3". I'm just a small frame little human. And so to have to deal with that recovery, and like, my body changing so drastically each time, 8 years ago, 2 years ago, and then now in January,
Mm-hmm.
it's just so different.
Yeah. And I think, going back to that advocating for yourself and lack of support for women, like here, it's so frustrating even talking about it. Like, okay, we're going to give you a C-section. Good luck on your recovery. Like there's no, there is no discussion on pelvic floor strengthening. There's no discussion on diastasis recti strengthening. So there's no therapy for any of that. It's like, okay, we're going to cut you open, literally cut you wide open and wish you the best. Also, you're going to have problems for the rest of your life, but
Forever.
good
Yeah,
luck.
good luck.
Good luck. That is
right.
so, it like makes me, I'm like sweating almost. I'm like, so
I know,
mad.
I am too. I'm like, oh,
I'm so mad about it, because it's so frustrating that as women, we don't have this. And that's why we want to have this conversation, right? Like you and I want to have this conversation to bring awareness so people know that stuff like this is actually happening, and not a lot of people are talking about it, and not a lot of people are sharing about it. There's not a lot of platforms to share this type of experience and just to be this open with it. And I just think that if people understand and know the risks going into another pregnancy or the possibility of C-sections or whatever, or if you're going to have another C-section because your doctor said you should, or whatever, like maybe advocate a little bit more, maybe ask us some more questions and dive a little deeper and
Right.
see if there's another provider out there, see if there's another hospital
Yes.
nearby, see if, just see what other options are. And if you've exhausted all your options and that's what you need to do, then okay, there's
Right.
reasons for it. But there's this big but there, that it's like,
Right.
make sure you know the risks and you understand
Yeah.
there are more things that could happen than what is actually being discussed amongst healthcare providers and their patients.
Sure. And like, even prior to my emergency, I would tell everyone, and not to scare them, but because I've been that mom twice.
Mm-hmm.
If you're pregnant, you're not, when they like say, oh, I'm having a baby. Okay, I'm excited, like, yay. And then a couple months later, it's like, please do some research about cesareans, because number one, if it's medically necessary, you have to be like, it's a mental shift from deciding to do, you have your labor plan, you got your people in your room, this is what you want, epidural, no, you got it all planned out. And then they throw out you, oh, hey, yeah, we have to have a C-section. You're like, okay, time out. What? So like, I always tell every mom at a point where I feel is appropriate, like, do a little bit of research. So if that does get thrown at you, you know your options, the risks, the post care. I mean, it's so, you can't leave and lift your baby out of the crib, like, it is so different than a natural birth. So like, I've advocated for just knowledge, period, about both natural and cesarean, because, it seemed, thereafter, like, I had Bryn, so many people, yeah, I had a C-section. I'm like, what is going on? Like, why is there so many C-sections? I don't know if it's our area or the physicians here or the hospitals here, but it felt like everybody that we were with for a while was having C-sections. And I just felt like I needed to speak up on, not necessarily sharing my negative experience, but just the idea, like, you have to be ready as a mom to, to encompass whatever might come with that decision at that point,
Yeah. And look into the hospital statistics. Like, you can do that, and you can ask them too, what are your C-section rates? And that was something that we asked Audie. Like, that was something,
right.
And one of the things that I loved about her, and I don't know, I have not experienced a cesarean, but one of the things that I did ask her about was like, how often do you perform C-sections, or how often do your pregnancies get to that point? But she's not allowed to do them. So her C-section rate is really low, because she actually has to call in the doctor to perform them. And so I don't know. I don't know if that makes a difference. I don't know if that has anything. I don't know how that all comes into play. She does take on patients that have had past C-sections, but then when it comes to actual delivery, she doesn't do that. I mean, there's just options, and you can ask the questions, and you have every right to inconvenience them, inconvenience them, because this is your life and your baby's life.
Right.
And so also, before we were talking, I was just like looking through some of the notes that I had took, and you were talking about the fact that you strongly encourage women to, like, as you're talking to them about the C-section, but you also talk to them about double checking their blood type and asking the question about if the hospital has enough blood for them. Do you want to explain that a little bit, and why?
Yeah. So like, demographically speaking, we kind of live in a small area, I don't know what our blood supply is here at our hospital, but we have three decent sized, two pretty decent sized hospitals within a 40-mile radius. But so women in any sort of childbirth, natural or cesarean, I don't know the percentage combined, but it's a great majority of women that may end up needing blood for one reason or another. But women who experience placenta Percreta or Recreta, 90% of them will require blood. It's a straight up hemorrhage, like you're hemorrhaging out to death. And so if you didn't ask those questions and by chance you ended up experiencing this, if you're 1 in 272 or 1 in 2,500 or 1 in a million, and your hospital didn't have the appropriate blood supply, to save your life, I just can't even fathom that,
Mm-hmm.
So I think asking those questions is it's just like we said, advocating for yourself and asking the questions that can save you and your baby's life,
Mm-hmm.
had they not had enough blood in Spokane, which is a way greater demographic than we are population wise, but
Mm-hmm.
who knows what would have happened. And so a lot of the survivors from this host blood drives in their local neighborhoods and their local communities. And since January is my survival month, I want to host a blood drive here locally to to support the Red Cross and support our local hospitals, just to bring awareness around it. And I know that here locally they're running low on blood donors, and so it's really important, I think, for all aspects of all of our lives and all of our loved ones. But I feel so so favored to this because I experienced it myself. So, but 90%, that's a huge amount of women who will need blood to save their life or their baby's life that experience this sort of trauma.
Yes. And we do live in a small rural area. So, I mean, you hope and pray that they have enough. I mean, you just assume, I guess, would be a better way of putting
Right.
it. You
Right.
assume, and you should
Yep.
never assume something like that. I mean, that isn't ever something that crossed my mind when we went to deliver, at the hospitals, but
Right.
it's a really, really good question. It's a really good thing to think about. And I love that you're trying to do something positive to help people out of such a traumatic event for you. I feel like it's going to help in your healing process, and it's going to
Yeah.
help you advocating for others, in a time when maybe you felt like you couldn't have advocated for yourself. However, I will say that you did advocate for yourself by going back up there and inconveniencing them and doing the things that we already talked about, like
Right.
people aren't always doing. And so where are you at in your healing process now? Like, how do you, I guess maybe a better question would be, how did you recover from this emotionally? And do you feel like you still have a ways to go, or do you think that what kinds of things have you done?
So I think that I have a long ways to go. I have shared my story not in its entirety to many people because it's a lot, like it's a lot to take in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but this October is Placenta Percreta Awareness Month, and I'm a member of a lot of Facebook groups that I have joined since my trauma to try to help understand what I'm feeling and if it's okay and am I okay, and so this is a big month for survivors like myself. And when you asked me to do this earlier this month, it was like, okay, this is my sign. Like, you need to do this
Mm-hmm.
because, I've been listening to all the stories and seeing all the posts, and that's what awareness is about, is like bringing awareness to situations and advocation and um, you know, but I feel like I do have long ways to go. The biggest thing for me is like if you experience finding out you're pregnant as a surprise and you're like, oh my gosh, I get that.
Mm-hmm.
If you experience miscarriage, I get that. If you experience your ability to reproduce being taken from you, I get that.
Mm-hmm.
Like all these things that one woman shouldn't experience in her lifetime, let alone one right after another, after another, after another. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I get that.
Mm-hmm.
And I hear you, and you're okay not to be okay sometimes
Mm-hmm.
because, like, we as women take this burden of mom and wife and employee and sister and granddaughter and mother and friend and all these roles. But there are things that happen to us as in each of those roles, or as we're trying to become those people that affect our every single day life. And like, it's okay not to be okay,
Mm-hmm.
you know? So like, anybody who's listening that has experienced any one of these things, like, you know, it's okay to ask for help, and it's okay to share your story, and it's okay to mourn the loss of who you used to be, or embrace who you're becoming, even if it's not who you thought you would be, you know. um because like, it's a lot to go through in a small amount of time, but
Mhm.
I want anyone who's experienced even a piece of it to know that, you know, they can get through it, and they are strong, and we are strong as women. We are so strong. We're stronger
Mhm.
than we ever even think we are. And when we come across these events in our life that challenge us, or, you know, change the course of our life plan,
Mhm.
we can still navigate them, you know.
Mhm. I think that the strength comes and the lessons come with how you handle those obstacles and how you come out on the other side. And there is a time for mourning, and there is a time to sort of embrace the weakness of your body and embrace the weakness of your mental and emotional state, and realize and recognize that and face that, and then look it in the eye and say, okay, now I have to overcome this. Now I have to get over this and
Right.
come out on the other side stronger. So what I'm seeing you do is share your story in little bits and pieces, and take another step. I mean, at your 1 year mark, you're ready to do a blood drive, because
Yes.
now you want to help. So like, you're overcoming it and facing it in the eye by helping others and doing, what you can with what you can. And I think that's amazing, Terrianne. I think that's incredibly brave. And I know that sharing your story is, you don't always have the option to come onto a podcast and like talk about it for an hour, like,
All right.
that's why I think it's like,
Uh,
so I think it's so beautiful that you're able to come on and do this. And I'm happy that I was able to give you that opportunity too, to share this on a platform that you can reach a lot of people, because, you know, advocating and building awareness and sharing these kinds of things, it all comes down to sharing your story. You can talk about it and say, hey, this is a thing that's out there, but until somebody hears your story and understands the emotional level and the trauma that somebody has gone through, you don't really fully grasp what placenta percreta is. You don't really understand it. So I think it's great and incredibly brave that you're doing that. And like you said, I hope that other women understand that the traumas that they've gone through and the things that they've gone through, there's people out there that have gone through something similar or exactly the same. And by sharing your story, you're going to help another mama. Like, it's just inevitable. You're going to help somebody. You're going to heal somebody else, or at least give them an outlet and a knowing that somebody else out there has gone through this too. So I
well, and that's
I
like,
think it's great.
that's what I'm hoping to gain, you know. And I thought, I was scared, I was nervous, a
Hmm.
little uncomfortable, all these things.
Hmm.
But I thought, like, you survived this, so
Hmm.
why not share it? And like,
Yes.
if anyone who's listening has questions, or like even just needs a person to talk to, you're more than welcome to reach out to me. I'm happy to answer any questions, or any feedback that you have. It's a blessing. Amy and I are from a really small town. I'm sure you've spoken about it, but it's small,
Hmm.
like 600 people small. It's teeny.
Yes.
Um, and even, I won't age myself too much, but a decade or more after graduating from that teeny town, the amount of love and support I was given by everyone in our community. We had a meal delivered to us at our door for 4 weeks straight. There
Hmm.
wasn't a night that we didn't have enough food to supply our family of 5 for over a month.
Hmm.
Every night, people brought food, and, donations were made to help pay for our medical bills. And, like, it takes a tribe and a family. And people say that all the time in passing, but like, the people that Amy and I have grown up with, and the community that we have, is something so special and tremendous and beautiful. I'm so blessed and thankful to have the family and friends that I had to help get me through what I went through, times 1,000. I mean, I just never would have without without my family and friends. But like, I'm ready now to help other people who may not have that same community or may not have those friends or family. I felt alone even with everyone in my corner. I can still sometimes sit and think, I just wish I had, someone who understood this a little more, or someone who could hear me and feel what I'm feeling. And so I think that's important to address, is like, there are people who don't have the same circle that we're so thankful and blessed to have. But I want to be that person for someone else who maybe they're in New Hampshire, maybe they're in Florida, maybe they're in Texas, but somebody who needs somebody. Like, I can hear you, and I want to be able to help you too. So that's why I shared.
Yeah,
So.
I know. I think it's beautiful. And I think that so much growth and healing comes from that. We talk about that, like growth through vulnerability. Like, this is the ultimate vulnerable story. And I think that I hope that every woman listens to it, and maybe they've never gone through it, but maybe they know somebody else who's had a miscarriage, or who's had a C-section, or who's had any kind of a medical complication. You just never know what other people are going through in their lives. So what are your next steps for healing through this? I mean, I know you're doing the blood drive in January, but do you have you have plans? And I guess I was going to ask you to actually answer that question. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So I actually am cleared to see the pelvic floor therapist, which is appropriate after 6 to 8 months after a hysterectomy. So I'm going to do that. So that's good. And I just had a follow-up from some, what I thought might be complications from the hysterectomy, but they didn't find anything. So we're just going to keep an eye on it. So that's good. I mean, that's great.
Yes.
And I mean, outside of the blood drive, which I'm trying to get everything prepared for in January, I'm just gonna, keeping on.
Yeah.
So pelvic floor therapy, I'm hoping good things for that. There's a lady here in Lewiston actually that I was referred to, and I've heard great things about her. There's only one pelvic floor therapist here.
In Lewiston.
So our options are very limited. Yes.
And I think she's fairly new. She's fairly new, because we used to have nobody, and you used to have to go to Pullman. And if you have terrible insurance, for everybody that's listening, Pullman is out of state. So that would mean, like, if your insurance is what my insurance is, anything out of state is out of network. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So it wouldn't even be
so
covered.
I'm excited to see her, because
Amazing.
She's here in town. She's in Idaho. She's got our same insurance coverage. And so that's my next step. And then just continuing on with, the path of recovery, and hoping that I don't have any other complications, within the next foreseeable future. So yeah.
Well, I think you're doing wonderful. I'm super grateful to have you come on the show and share your story. So I love all the advice that you've given women so far. I will put for the listeners, I'm going to put the Facebook groups that Terrianne follows in the show notes. I'm also going to put Terrianne's contact information in there as well. So if you have any questions, you can always reach out to her. And is there anything else that you'd like to add, Terrianne, that we didn't cover? That would be just my last and final question.
I don't think so. I'm just really thankful for you and your friendship. I'm so proud of everything that you have accomplished and everything that you're doing. I am madly proud of you and jealous that you get to stay home with your sweet babies.
Thank you.
And I am thankful that you asked me to do this, because like I said, outside of immediate friends and family, and even those people, it's not like a let's cut to the chase type of story, so to be able to share it in its entirety, I've never done, I don't think. So I'm thankful that you asked me to do this, and I'm thankful for you. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And that was very nice of you to say. You're like making me tear up over here. And we touched on this, but I do want to add really quick that when we started talking, this was just a few weeks ago, I think it was right we started talking about this in September. And when you started telling me this story, because I hadn't really seen you in person since all of this had happened, I was like, blown away by this story. It's like, oh my gosh, I have to share this. And then I talked to you about it. And then,
Yeah.
so you said, yes, I would love to. And then that's when you told me when I asked you to do it and you were going to come on the show, it was in October, which is the awareness month, which is just
Yes.
like, when you texted me that and you messaged me that, I got like chills. I got goosebumps.
Right?
And I just think that this was meant to be. And I think it was amazing. And so I'm grateful that you said yes, because a lot of people would not be brave enough to share their stories. So,
Well, thank you. And I
yeah.
would have never known it was awareness month because I haven't experienced in October being a survivor yet, but one
Yes.
down. So
Yay. I'm so proud of you for your strength. And I'm happy that you're a survivor. I mean, I know that sounds very cliche, but I'm happy that we can actually have this conversation, that you're here with us. So
I'm too, because I was close to not making it through. And I don't think a lot of people realize how close I was to not being here. So cheers to that. And
yes.
to anybody else who has survived it, like I'm here for you. So anyways,
Yes.
here we are.
Well, thank you, Terrianne. Thank you so much. And we'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Thanks for having me.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.
Hey, Mama. Thank you so much for joining me today in this amazing conversation that I had with Terrianne. I am so proud of her as her friend. I'm so proud of her for coming on to the podcast and sharing her story with us, for sharing her journey and for sharing her survival with us, and in her bravery and hopes of helping another mama and her steps that she's taking to move forward. So if you found value in today's episode, if you enjoyed today's episode, and if you'd like to help us spread awareness and educate other mamas, please, I ask you to please share this with another mama friend. Share this to your stories today. It's the only fee that we ask on the podcast, that I ask on the podcast, is to just share it and show your support for Terrianne. Share this in your stories or on Facebook, and feel free to tag her in it. She was a little bit nervous to share her story. She's, like she mentioned in the podcast, she's never really shared the whole story in its entirety with people other than her close family. So let's give her a little bit of support and share it today. And again, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for supporting this community. Thank you so much for supporting the podcast. And I look forward to talking to you again soon.